Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that today, January 6, 2020, is the anniversary. It's the 1 year anniversary of what happened at our capital. What I call the insurrection, what I call the attempted coup. Others might disagree with my definition of it, my description of it, and we're going to talk about that today. Senator Tina Smith is going to join us, great senator from the great state of Minnesota. We're also going to visit with Lori Levinson from Loyola. She teaches at the law school there. But we get to visit with our congressman, Kelly Armstrong from the great state of North Dakota. Congressman Armstrong, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me on, Joel.
Let's talk about it a little bit. You were there. You were there when the Capitol got attacked. What was going through your mind?
I just would say you were one of the first people to reach out to me by text too, so I do appreciate that. And I can tell you how I view it, because most of my staff stayed home, so we had obviously had taken some precautions, which means we knew there was a risk of something happening, which is in and of itself unfortunate. But I was very scared for my chief. When Cannon got breached, I was on the floor of the House, and my chief was the only one in the office, and I was very, very, very worried. So I always try not to forget that as all of this gets hyper politicized on one side or the other. And I was on the balcony with two freshman members who are both really smart, really capable people. But all I could think about is 2 days into Congress, I got lost immediately in the Capitol. And if they get separated from us, they'll have no idea where to go. So that kept me calm while we were on there, is because I was with, it was Representative Stephanie Bice and Representative Pete Meyer. And so I was just very, very, it gave me an outlet to be like, listen, we cannot lose these two because they don't know anything about the structure. I still get lost there. I bet if you came back, you'd get lost there too. So that gave me something to focus on. So that helped.
Well, and that is great to hear. I wasn't going to share the fact that I was worried. I have a means of connecting with you, and when I text you, I just wanted to know how you were. I wasn't going to use it on media or anything. I was just worried about you, man, and it was that scary for me. And if it's that scary for me, I can't imagine what it was like for you being there. And this staff, these people, they work for you. And it's your job to look out for them the same way it's their job to look out for you. So what did you see in people's eyes, Congressman Armstrong?
Well, I think just generally, right? And I have not unique, but a different perspective on this, because I've been at least tangentially involved with, unfortunately, a lot of violence in my life, just because I was a criminal defense attorney, and you deal with a lot of those things. But I also had the opportunity to deal with law enforcement. And that's one of the other things that I think people need to remember this. First of all, when you conflate this to 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, that's inappropriate too. And I want to be clear. And I don't call it an insurrection. I call it a violent mob that had a riot at the Capitol. I think those two things are absolutely accurate. If you take all the partisanship out of it, that is significantly what happened. But listen, 140 cops were hurt, defeated. And I went and walked and talked to some of them after everything else when we were going back to the floor. And the only reference I could ever personally give for that is I remember being in a National Guard armory in Grand Forks after everything breached and the flood came, and looking at a bunch of National Guards men and women sitting in a corner and just looked like they were absolutely defeated. And for whatever reason, that was the emotional feel of being around the officers at that time. And I don't think we should ever forget that. But I also don't think we should conflate it to something that it wasn't. And I think, unfortunately, in these political times, that both of those things occur.
Well, and the reason I'm comfortable calling it an insurrection is because the very definition of an insurrection is a violent uprising against an authority or government. And so, to me, that's what it was. You saw leaders of your side of the aisle, Minority Leader McCarthy, and you saw on the Senate side, you saw Mitch McConnell, the minority leader there. You saw these individuals take to the floor and make some strong statements in regards to the role that then President Trump played in all of this. And then they walked it back. And we can talk about the politics of all of this, but I have to ask you this. Is there some type of a fear of the ex-president, the former president, when it comes to all of this? Because I thought the statements that they made on the floor, number one, they were accurate, and granted, passion came into it, but I thought they needed to be said. And so I'm curious from your side of the aisle why it seems that people are walking back the feelings that they had at the time.
Well, first of all, I gave some pretty strong statements on the floor as well. I don't get the coverage that Minority Leader McConnell gives or our Leader McCarthy or Minority Leader McCarthy gets, but I can't speak to them, but I can tell you that immediately, and unfortunately, as is all things in DC lately, everything gets hyper partisan. And when you immediately do all of those things, you push everything back into their bunkers. I think there's been failure in communication at the very least on both sides. But as somebody, again, who used to do this, you don't change the rules for a murder case versus a DUI case. And almost instantly, what has happened on our side of the chamber is every time the word unprecedented comes up, it's a reason to change the rules, document, galvanize more authority in the leadership's office, kick minority members off of the committee, and deal with that. I can tell you personally, for me, I deal a lot with people on my side of the aisle. Far too many call people in January, the offenders of January 6th political prisoners. That is not true. They are federal criminal defendants. If you think they're being treated unfairly, I actually agree with you. Do I think they're being uniquely treated unfairly as federal defendants? Absolutely not. I've represented lots of federal defendants. I think we're getting I always look for a glass half full. Hopefully, maybe we can do some of those reforms about Bureau of Prisons. Guy just resigned yesterday. I'm proud of that. But also at the same time, I think when you conflate, we have one side, I think, really, really overrepresents this. And I think too many on my side underrepresent what happened. And I just try and give it context to everything.
Well, I want to go back to it then, because Congressman Armstrong, we've got a number of law enforcement officers, I believe it's 4 in the Capitol Police, that have committed suicide. We have another that died of a heart attack. We have some that were crushed. We've had individuals that testified in front of the committee that is investigating this, that gave some pretty strong testimony in regards to their lives and how it's affected their lives. With all due respect, sir, I'm not sure comparing this on that side to a DUI is in any way fair. And so
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you don't change the rules on the most intense, most emotional, hardest things you deal with, that's when your rules and procedures have to work the best. Okay. That is functionally I'm not equating it to a DUI. I am saying that what we have done and the leadership has done is use this event as an excuse to change the rules, and I have a real problem with that.
Okay, I'm glad you got a chance to say that.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I talk to these guys every single day.
Yeah, it jumped out at me. So let me ask you this: the question you knew I was going to ask you when we asked you to come on, which is, do you believe that Donald Trump played a role in these individuals coming to the Capitol and creating the riot then that they did? Do you believe that the former president is responsible for any of this?
I think, yes. I think the speech at the very least was really irresponsible. I'm really not comfortable with how and when the whatever went out about Vice President Pence. I think you know my view on the certification of the electors. I think our role is ministerial. I had a real issue with that. I will tell you, there was a ton of intelligence that existed far in advance of everything the president did. And I think that's one of my biggest concerns with this is we had leadership failures, we had intelligence failures. We knew whatever committee was formed was going to go after the president and deal with those types of things. That was always going to be a foregone conclusion. We'll go back to the 4 officers that testified. They had every right to say that. Listen, I said that. If you are a law enforcement agent in that type of scenario, you have every single right to express your opinion, and I have no qualms about any of them doing that. But the other answer is they had 50 years of tactical experience, 50 years between the 4 of them. And we haven't asked a single question about that. And to this day, we still haven't asked any questions about that. And that's what's really frustrating to me, because not only do we have to protect the Capitol from this happening again, but we have to do it in a way where we don't isolate ourselves. And that's what's been the most frustrating thing for me the last year is we have walled off the United States Capitol from the general public. And I think we're spending far too much time, which was always going to happen, on those issues and not on how we do this moving forward. But yes, I do. I mean, I've said that afterwards. I'm not changing that. Yes, I don't. I think the rally was a bad idea. I think I wish that the president would have said something quicker as somebody who was in the building. I'm not sure how much that would have mattered at that time. But I think there, I mean, yes, I mean, and I'm comfortable saying that, and I'll get beat up on my side just for saying that too. So
do you believe had these individuals gotten to Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence, do you believe they'd be alive today?
I don't know the answer to that. And I also want to say, because this is important to me too, because I've been in fights with my own side on this during this, and you know, there's whataboutism and there's precedent, but I do want to say, I blame the people who were in the Capitol. That's who I blame. I mean, that is whose fault you start with, and everything after that is secondary. And that is just, by the way, that's the same for whatever if people on my side want to talk about the riots and things of that summer. I don't blame some opaque internet group. I blame the people who were doing it. I think we have to make sure we keep the fault there first.
Congressman, you know, I thank you for coming on. And most importantly, a year later, I'm thankful that you can come on. And I'm thankful that you're as honest and made the statements you made, because everyone knows that what you said ticked him off, ticked off the former president. So that's just reality. I appreciate you coming down the road with us.
And I still owe you another radio interview where you get to beat me up a little bit.
Yeah, I do, because you were wrong about the Build Back Better and how that linked. But that's a whole nother issue. We'll do that. So, Congressman Armstrong, appreciate you coming on.